Hey, good morning. I'm Patricia Murphy. It's Thursday. This is Seattle Now. We're in an ongoing nationwide listeria outbreak linked to pasta. It may have you wondering about the state of food safety under the Trump administration, especially in a government shutdown. We'll talk to local food safety lawyer Bill Marler about it in a minute. But first, let's get you caught up. The first 25 pickleball-themed state license plates will be auctioned off starting next week. The Seattle Metro Pickleball Association says the license plate will cost $40. That includes an extra fee. The proceeds go to the construction and maintenance of dedicated public pickleball courts around the state. If pickleballing isn't your thing, there are many more themed license plates available. Check out Mount St. Helens, Smokey the Bear, and my favorite, honeybees and pollinators. Grab your tote bag, book lovers. Barnes & Noble plans to open a new store downtown. The Pacific Place location closed back in early 2020. The Seattle Times reports the bookseller is leasing space on 6th and Pike, which was formerly occupied by the North Face. No word on when it might open. Barnes & Noble has been opening more stores nationwide. Get your rain game in order because we are back. Yesterday's rain and wind was only the beginning. The National Weather Service says it's going to stay soggy through Sunday. Check back for more headlines and an election update on tonight's episode of Seattle Now. A deadly listeria outbreak is worsening. According to federal officials, more than a dozen states have reported cases. 6 people have died. The Centers for Disease Control has linked the outbreak to prepared pasta. It's just the latest listeria outbreak over the past year, and it's happening alongside a government shutdown. Food safety attorney Bill Marler is here to talk about what consumers should know about the outbreak and how recent federal cuts are affecting our ability to track it. Thanks for taking the time, Bill.
Thanks. I always kind of apologize when I come on here. It's usually talking about some disaster, and here we're in the middle of another one. So
that's okay. We need your voice. So the current nationwide listeria outbreak has sickened people in 18 states, including Washington. What should listeners understand?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is an adage that I cannot figure out who said it. But the adage is, when in doubt, throw it out. And I know that sounds a little silly, but listeria is a really deadly pathogen, second only to botulism and its rate of death. So about a third of the people stricken by listeria will die. And so that's a pretty big number. And you see kind of that in how many people got sick and died in this instance. And so this outbreak was tangentially figured out in about April of this year, but it was unclear what item in the pasta was making people sick. And they eventually figured out that it was the pasta itself, Nate's pasta from California. And so this pasta was made by Nate's and then sent to a bunch of different manufacturers who, made this variety of different kinds of frozen products that went all over the United States, made at the same factory, but they just had different labels on it. And that's a lot of how our food is made. It makes it really difficult to track things. But people need to check their refrigerators, check their freezers, and, if they, see that it's these products, obviously throw them away. But if you just can't figure it out and you have a frozen pasta product in your freezer, throw that out too. So It's just not worth the risk.
You mentioned this has been going on since the spring. Is it unusual that investigators were unable to pinpoint the source until now?
Foodborne illness investigations are always hard, even in the best of circumstances, without, cutbacks and without government shutdowns, they're difficult. But this one the lag is a little more concerning to me than ones I've seen in the past, given the fact that very early in this year, the entire communications divisions of FDA and CDC disappeared. And, they've cut back tremendously at the CDC in foodborne illness surveillance. A lot of this stuff is kind of boots on the ground work. Listeria is a reportable bacterial infection. And so once a lab has a positive and they contact the health department, that health department contacts the person. And then there's a lot of where'd you go, what'd you eat, what'd you do, all that stuff. So it takes some time. And then all that information is uploaded to CDC PulseNet, which is a database of genetic fingerprinting that links all these people together and figures that out. It's time consuming, but as you can understand, as I've described it, it's labor intensive. And if you don't have people doing it, they're not there. It just obviously makes it harder to do. And, I think, unfortunately, that's the position that we're in.
You're making me wonder who is monitoring food safety and investigating outbreaks right now.
It's interesting. I was thinking about that on Friday night late, which is a lot of times when foodborne illness outbreaks are announced. They updated this outbreak Friday night. And I was thinking to myself, it's like, who's doing this? I've kind of been asking people in the food safety space who's doing it. And no one really knows. I kind of think there's probably some scientist, guy or gal, sitting in their bathrobe in their house with access to this data, thinking, hey, I better get this stuff out. I know I'm not getting paid. I'm on furlough, and I'm not even going to get my back paychecks. But I think it's important to let the public know that this outbreak is ongoing.
Oh, my gosh. Not to mention, on top of that, Bill, we've been hearing about a strained workforce, understaffed for most of 2025. That cannot be helping improve food safety. What does that mean?
I'll give you an example. When the Doge boys came in, they were just seriously walking down the hallway. This is what they described. Walking down the hallway with selfie sticks. And they would just pick random people, take a picture of them with them and say, you're fired. You have to go. You have to go. And people were hiding in their offices, calling their friends who were out doing investigations or who were out sick or whatever. They go, don't come into the office, stay out. And, after the Doge boys left, when they fired all these people and people who'd been there for 20, 30 years, they boxed up their stuff in a box and left. People who were left were like, oh my God, I feel guilty that I didn't get fired. Then you're seeing people just simply going, I'm not going to wait until, the hammer falls. I'm just going to go get another job. And so I've gotten calls from really highly qualified epidemiologists and people in the FDA and CDC looking, hey, get some work out there for us. And that's crazy. I mean, we're decimating all this incredible history of people figuring things out and protecting us. It's just shocking.
Is there anyone, you mentioned, you've got epidemiologists calling you. Is there anyone to step in and supplement the federal work that isn't happening?
Yes. And this is sort of the good news about having a federal society. We have 50 states, and those 50 states have health departments that kind of look like the miniature version of a CDC. And we're starting to see states, willing states, and we've seen Oregon, Washington, California already, in a pack with health. They're not focused necessarily on food. They're focused on vaccinations and things. But I think it's a step forward, especially nowadays. Most of these foodborne illness outbreaks that you hear about are multi-state outbreaks. So it does require multiple states working together to do this. But if you have states that just are anti-science and they're not putting money into their public health, you're just flying blind in those states and, not being helpful at all in figuring out these multi-state outbreaks. These 27 people who've been sickened in this outbreak, the listeria that was found in those bodies are all the same genetic fingerprint. That tells you that it came from one source. And they also found it in the pasta. So we all know that it came from the pasta. That technology didn't exist 30 years ago when I did the Jack in the Box case. And frankly, in the last decade, outbreaks have been more frequently figured out, but they're smaller and the outbreaks happen quicker and the product gets off the market. So we really have been moving in a super positive direction in foodborne illness. And, now we're just like going, forget it.
What do we lose when food safety isn't seen as a worthy investment?
Well, what happens is people get sick and die.
You busy these days, Bill Marler?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I've actually hired another epidemiologist. I've hired another lawyer. And, it's just a lot because the illnesses are still happening. A lot of people are not being connected to public health. Their illnesses are not being fully investigated. And so we have the skill set to do that.
Earlier this week, we did an episode about how many people in the Seattle area are struggling with food insecurity right now. Between SNAP cuts, federal workers going unpaid, and rising food costs, throwing food out isn't an easy option. And we're talking about convenience foods here. That also speaks to our culture. What if contaminated pasta is your only option? What does this say about where we're at here?
It is not worth the risk. And, I know that most of these stores who've sold this product, you can take that back and they'll give you either a refund or you can get, something else. And so don't roll the dice to see if you can cook listeria out of your pasta. It ain't worth the risk. Even for people who survive it, it's a bacteria that gets in your bloodstream, can get in your spinal fluid. If it doesn't kill you, it's not going to make you stronger. It's going to, cause more havoc.
Important information, Bill. Before I let you go, I know you don't do bagged salad. Are you adding anything new to the list right now?
My advice, I'm not a big organic foodie guy, but, keeping things simple, washing things yourself, not purchasing things just for convenience, but purchasing things and, cooking them yourselves and washing them yourselves. And you're creating less of a problem because there's been a lot less opportunities for these pathogens to get into the food. And, we produce a lot of food and a lot of food safely, but keeping things simple and keeping things local also has a safety spin to it. And so that's what I would urge, especially the vulnerable population to think about.
Attorney Bill Marler, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
You bet. Have a great day.
Appreciate you listening. Today's episode was produced by Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers. It was edited by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez. Our production team also includes Vaughn Jones, Andy Hurst, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you soon.